So in speaking about Baby's First Test, we are the nation's newborn screening clearinghouse. And what that really means is that we're a one-stop shop for newborn screening information for both families as well as health professionals. We really are here to pull together all the information that's out there about newborn screening and present it in a way that is actionable and available for providers. You know, there's some, I still hear a little bit of noise, so I'll clarified a little bit. So we have information about state conditions, a number of different resources that are both state specific and then also more general in terms of newborn screening, what you can expect leading up to it, what the screening process actually is and the different components to it, as well as what to do if there's an out of range result and or a diagnosis and resources. So we're all along that line. So really looking from the beginning all the way through, being able to provide information and connect people to the resources and the services that they need. And so today, as many of you know, there are different newborn screening conditions that require a special diet to avoid health problems that can be life-threatening. And while there's a lot that's out there about the science of that and what that means and different formulas and also just really tracking different components of food, we really wanted a little bit more of a real life in the trenches approach to this. So our speakers today really are here to provide that. This is a topic that we've been discussing for a number of weeks in a couple of different ways. You may have seen discussions about it on social media, as well as through our public square. That is our main discussion, and the link to the public square will be in the chat box, and so you can check that out. But definitely feel free to post comments, leave questions, provide answers if you have them through that medium, both throughout the chat as well, or throughout this discussion, as well as afterwards. And before we kind of turn it over to hearing more directly from our experts on the line, I wanted to let you all know that this is being recorded and we will release the recording a couple of days from now. Also, we will be doing questions and answers at the very end, but you can submit questions through the chat feature throughout the presentation and we'll just go through them on a first-come, first-served basis. So don't feel that you have to wait till the very end to put in your question. I know for me, sometimes I forget my question by the time I get to the end. So definitely feel free to use that chat feature. And so without further ado, we are going to turn it to our panelists. And I would like each of you to introduce yourselves by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, how you became involved in newborn screening, I mean, really, what's your story that brings you to this? And so first, let's have Tiffany. How about you go?
Okay. Hi, I'm Tiffany. My daughter, who is now 12, was born with a positive newborn screen. It was California had just implemented it. She was actually positive for GA2 and MCAD. But after further testing, she just has MCAD. It's been a long, long road to figure all of this out. She also has other conditions. So she's allergic to like 40 different foods and she has celiac disease. So making sure she gets all the right nutrition is really hard. She's been on a formula for most of her life.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. I don't know if you said it, I may have missed it, but when was the diagnosis made? Like how many years ago about, or how old is yours?
So she is 12. We got the phone call when she was 5 days old, so we needed to get her back to the hospital. And that's where they did further testing, because if she had both of what she tested positive for on the newborn screen, it would have been a disaster. So they kept us there until the tests came back, and she was only positive for MCAD, which is a fatty acid oxidation disorder. So it's called medium chain acyl dehydrogenase deficiency disorder. So she can't digest fat, like medium chain fat, and she can't store anything. So she can't fight off a common cold like the way we do because she has nothing to store. She can't store it. It just goes through her, like, and it causes medical problems, and it causes a fatty liver. But like, yeah, so she has been, just this year, she has been hospitalized 3 times. And our longest run without a hospitalization was 17 months.
Thank you so much for all that that information and kind of setting the stage for your story and how you come to this topic. Next, we will have Maria. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Sure. My name is Maria Deppenweiler. I reside in Canada. I'm a professional home economist, chef, and a nutritionist. I have a degree in food science and nutrition from Dietitians of Canada accredited university program. I have PQ myself. I run my own business, The Wooden Spoon. It's a consulting business. And I'm a mom of 2 non-PKU boys. The older one is going to turn 5 in January, and the younger one is going to turn 3 in March of next year.
Thank you. And next we'll have Brenda. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Brenda Winiarski. I am the founder of a non-for-profit called Cook for Love, which is a free low-protein recipe site for people in the metabolic community. I was introduced to the metabolic community through newborn screening. My daughter was 6 days old, had a positive result, and you know, I'm so grateful for newborn screening, and I'm so grateful that my daughter she's now 17. She's going off to college in September, and you know, it hasn't been easy, and for sure. There's been a lot of struggles along the way, but to know that the end game is you know, her path is there, and that it hasn't held her back is really pretty incredible.
Great. Thank you so much for that background information. So just to give a sense of how the talk will go, for the next 20 to 30 or so minutes, I'll have some scripted questions that we'll discuss, and then we will open it up to questions from our audience. But just to dive in, one thing that would be interesting to hear from you all, since you have some similarities but some differences, is for you, kind of what are some of the major challenges you feel like you face in dealing with either your own or your child's diagnosis, particularly as it pertains to nutrition and being able to feed and to make sure that your kids are getting the nutrients, or yourself are getting the nutrients that you need with the different restrictions. I guess we can start. I'll do the reverse order now. I'll start with Brenda.
I think, you know, the struggle, it changes as you're entering into different stages of, in my case, my daughter's life. You know, in the beginning, it was just so overwhelming trying to understand exactly what it was I needed to do to keep her healthy, and what foods to introduce and what foods not to. And, you know, that fear can almost paralyze you at times. And I think, you know, as you gain that information, you actually, for me, what I realized was the kitchen was where I started to feel empowered. It's where I felt so helpless at first that I couldn't do anything and I couldn't take care of her. But I realized through the kitchen, I could make things better and I can make it tastier. And, you know, as she got older, it certainly, you know, when they're little, you're trying to figure out how to make a nugget that looks like the chicken nuggets that everyone else is having. And, you know, now that she's older, it's more sophisticated meals. And it's, you know, at home, it's time consuming, but it's doable. It's hard, for me, it's hard to watch her struggle now in social situations when she's out with friends and doesn't have the options that everybody else has. That's the part that's the biggest challenge now as the transition goes over to her.
And how has she kind of tried to manage that or navigate that? I know that's always the hard time in terms of teenage years.
pretty, well, teenage years are rough, but you know, from the beginning, she was pretty amazing. I mean, we always talked about food. She's on a low protein diet because her body cannot metabolize one of the amino acids in protein. If it wasn't treated, that amino acid would build up in the blood, and when it crossed the blood-brain barrier, it would cause neurological problems. So, you know, from the very, very beginning, we talked about the differences in our food, that it was high protein and low protein. And she really had a grasp pretty early on, like even in preschool, we did a board for her that showed her how much she could have of this protein, because it's not a simple yes-no diet. And she was able to sort of navigate it and understand that if she wanted a higher protein food like popcorn, you know, she had to have a specialty low protein pasta for, you know, for her lunch, so that it would all work out in the end. But now it's, you know, now it's if I had to say the one thing, that certainly the ingredients in the food are very different from anything I ever imagined. But the food all tastes delicious, but it's spontaneity that's difficult. You know, you have to always be prepared. You always have to have a metabolic drink. You know, she always has to have a metabolic drink with her. She has to have snacks with her. She has to, you know, figure out, well, if we're going here, what is it that I can have? And it's great that there's online resources now. So if she's going to a restaurant, she can look and see what the menu is and figure out if there's an adaptation that can be made, or she can have it as is and, you know, kind of balance out her protein allowance for the day. So.
Great, thank you. The same question for you, Maria. Kind of what are the challenges you faced or those that you've worked with?
From my perspective, the biggest obstacle and biggest challenge is timing and menu planning. As Brenda mentioned, maintaining a low protein diet takes a lot of thinking ahead and a lot of planning ahead. Juggling that plus planning a menu for the week for the family, which is non-PKU, adds another dimension of complexity. Toss in two picky eaters. Somebody doesn't like this, somebody doesn't like that. It all comes down to really serious time pinch. So it's still work in process, but I think the biggest obstacle at this point in time in my life is working out timing and planning ahead.
And especially with little kids, it's always difficult. And how about for you, Tiffany, from your perspective at this point, what do you feel like have been the biggest challenges?
So the biggest challenges is the fact that she can't have most fats, and she's allergic to so many foods. So reading labels, it takes me hours to go grocery shopping because I have to read every single label that I put in the cart. I do have another child, and he is not allergic to any foods. So he has a special place where he keeps his foods, but preparing, it takes a long time. She's allergic to beef and lamb and turkey. So, and then she's allergic to milk and eggs. So we really have and she's gluten-free. So there's just a lot of, it's time consuming, and making 2 different meals, and I'm a single mom, so it's really time consuming. For example, I typically buy the same brand every single time, but I had gone to the store, and this is what made me start reading labels every time I went shopping. I picked up the same thing I got at home, and it was no longer gluten-free. So here I have this thing that my daughter loves, and she can't have it. For her, the challenge is she doesn't understand why she can't have certain things, and she watches kids eat, for example, cupcakes. They're really high in medium chain fat, plus they have gluten. So she doesn't understand why she has to have a special cupcake, or she has to have a special treat at school. As she's getting older, it's getting a little bit easier because she will just tell you, I can't have that. But younger, it was a lot of tears.
Do you feel that, were there any resources or people that you talked to that were helpful in trying to explain that to younger kids? I know that's always such a challenge in any context, trying to explain something to a young kid in terms of why they can or can't have something. Were there any resources or people that you talked to or ways that you got advice to at least help manage that?
So I bought children's books that explain each of her diagnoses is in detail. And then the questions kept coming up and they kept coming up. So we've gone into her classrooms and done like why she can't have it and what they could help her with, because they were like, well, what can Cadence have? Resources, like I have a lot of support groups online, but like my fatty acid oxidation disorder support group, a lot of those kids don't deal with the same like allergies and issues that she does. Some of them have a milk allergy, some of them might be gluten-free, but they're not all together. So I have to go to different places. I have a no nuts and seeds support group, and they help with like, she loved peanut butter before she became allergic to it. They have this, it's called wow butter, so she can eat it and it kind of tastes like peanut butter to her. But as far as like the gluten, she doesn't know any different. She has always been gluten free because she's always been so sick.
I'm going to kind of turn that question on to Brenda, and kind of as your daughter was growing up, what were some of the resources that you used in trying to explain at, you know, the different appropriate ages about her condition and what that meant?
My daughter's 17 now, so you know, initially when she was diagnosed, honestly, there was not much out there. We had a listserv, which would still exist, but that was pretty much it. So we just had to kind of read up on and understand child development, I think, and understand the stages that they were at, and you know, what they couldn't understand. And I always did my best to, you know, if they were having cupcakes at school, to make a low protein version of that cupcake so that she felt like she was included, even though she was very aware that hers was different. And, you know, as she got older, there was always something that, you know, maybe their cupcake was swirled, the icing was swirled on it and mine wasn't. You know, there was always something that was done wrong and it wasn't an exact match or anything like that. But, you know, it's, in terms of resources out there, it was really just kind of talking to her about, you know, for you, this just isn't good for your brain. Like, we never told her that she was allergic, and we didn't tell her that it was bad for her tummy, because we were afraid if she had it, you know, with PKU, there's no immediate effect. You know, you have a food you shouldn't have. You're not allergic to it, so you're not going to have an anaphylactic reaction. And the change is very gradual in terms of the impact it has on your brain. So it's not immediate for a kid. So it was really just, you know, this isn't good for your body. And, you know, just like Granny can't eat cheese, it's not good for her heart. Like, we kind of just tried to talk about how different people had different things. But because her disorder is so rare, and at the time there weren't the resources that are out there now in terms of, you know, Facebook and ways to connect, it was different. I mean, it was really just done on based on where she was and what she could and couldn't understand. But Facebook has been a game changer, I think, in terms of connecting.
Great, thank you. I think that's really helpful in thinking about kind of the why is it bad for you. I know, you know, I have a 7-year-old nephew, and so now everything is, well, why? Why this? Why that? And so I think being able to explain, you know, this, and not just that it's bad for you or no, but that this is bad for your brain. Different people have different things that are not good for them in different ways is a helpful tip. Maria, for you, when you were kind of growing up, kind of what did you find helpful in either learning about the condition yourself or sharing that information with students who are in your class or your friends?
Well, Our family had a very different approach, and I would still advocate that that is a very effective and good approach, is that both of my parents were as explicit as possible about the condition with me since I started asking questions. They disregarded my age, and they did not really simplify things for me. They told me as is. So this is speaking, you have this inborn condition. This is why you can't have this product because it's high in protein. By repeating that over and over again, first of all, I was not fretting about my food looking different from other people's food because I knew it was supposed to be different. And second, I was capable explaining what I couldn't have very early on. We had numerous situations where I was visiting my grandmother and we would start arguing, and by the time my parents came back, I would say, my grandmother tried to feed me a pan full of fried potatoes. I told her I cannot have those, but I would rather have that candy that you have in the closet because it's low protein. And the grandmother thought I would just want to have a sugar rush. So she insisted on me eating the potatoes. I refused. And then the parents would explain to her yet again that I was still the correct person in the argument because I really knew what I couldn't eat fairly early on. And giving as much information as possible about the condition to the child as early as possible empowers them to defend themselves in situations like this when mama or papa are not around. It empowers them to have a say and to have a power over what they eat. I was growing up in 80s and 90s, so there was no question about how my cupcake looked. There were no cupcakes. The sources of information where my parents would go would be the doctor. It would also be peer-reviewed journals and books because both my parents are scientists. But still, there were no support groups, there were no chat lists, there were no listservs, there was nothing of that sort available. We survived, not bad, not ideal, not perfect. So I just wanted to say that people now who have younger kids with inborn disorders, they have way more support than was available in the past. But as a person with an inborn metabolic disorder, I would ask the parents to please disclose as much as you can about the condition to the child as soon as you can, because we're living with it. This is our lifestyle. It's not a disease. It's not a condition. This is our life. And the sooner we're comfortable with it, the sooner we can start leading a normal, proper life and enjoying it. Because if it's kept as a condition, it's something temporary, it's something complicated, you can understand, but maybe later, but for now you can't eat all of this for no particular reason. That complicates and confuses the child.
I think that's a really strong point in terms of, how do you empower your child to be their self-advocate? And I think those are some good tips on how to do that, and knowing every kid is different to approach that.
But even the scenario, a kid is playing on a playground and somebody's mom offers them a granola bar just because the kids are playing so well and she wants to share a snack. The kid has to know that they can't have it and the reasons why. And it's not as dramatic to the child as it is to the parent, trust me.
I think that's a theme that we've heard from a number of different newborn screening conditions and with families. It's always, as makes sense, the parents are the ones who are really kind of that front line and really pushing, and the kid, it's just the life that they've always known. It's just kind of their baseline and like you said, their lifestyle. A question for all of you is, there was a question how years ago there weren't many resources out there, there wasn't a lot of information out there, and now we're at a point in time where of having a special diet is much more commonplace, particularly on the adult side, but probably also for children, whether that is gluten-free or low sugar or maybe not based off of a specific medical condition like a newborn screening condition, but just generally the discussion of nutrition and what people do or don't eat is a little bit more popular now than maybe a decade ago. My question is, do you think that has helped or hurt or kind of indifferent to your experiences? And I guess I'll start with Maria.
I can see a huge difference from the time when I went to high school to right now, when I can walk into a Starbucks and ask for a coffee with coconut milk and nobody looks at me twice. First of all, the coconut milk was invented about like 5 years ago, not even, so it hasn't been around that long. But I'm saying with a wave of these fad diets and fashion diets and attention to veganism, gluten-free, and all sorts of other dietetic specificities like locavores and all that stuff, people tend to tolerate special requests easier, and they don't make that much of an issue if you do a special order of something, or you say, I have my special requirements, and you remove, say, croutons and bacon from my Caesar salad. So it's not that much of an issue, where, say, 15 years ago, I would go to a restaurant and ask that. They would definitely ask why, or they just say, we don't do that. Right now, it's way more flexible. Like, I know I can go into a steakhouse and have a relatively low protein meal out of a soup and a really nice salad, and it's a steakhouse. So there's more flexibility, more acceptance of the fact that different people do have different dietary requests. Am I obligated to say that I have PKU on every corner? No. So it's a very personal question, in my opinion, and it's sort of a degree of comfort that you have on sharing or not sharing your condition. But I do find that now versus, say, 15 years ago, North America has definitely become more accommodating to special diets.
Great, thank you. The same question for you, Brenda, in terms of do you feel that the fact that there are more diets or special eating plans has been helpful, or how has that affected your daughter's approach? And I guess I would say, for everyone who isn't Brenda, if you could mute, that would be great.
I think it's been a game changer. There's so much more flexibility in terms of going to different restaurants. And, for us, there are certain restaurants that are certainly more accommodating and have more, and I think that's always been the case. Like, if you go to an Indian restaurant or you go to a Thai restaurant, there's more vegetable-based meals, and that's always been in existence. But I do think that a lot of chains now offer, gluten-free pizzas with vegan cheese. I think that, you go to a taco place and they might have a cauliflower taco. So there are just options that are out there sometimes without even having to make a request, which for my daughter is huge, to not have to say anything to anyone and just be able to order off the menu. And that's not something that ever would have happened, I think, even 3 years ago. I just think more and more people are aware of different tastes and even just the boom of vegetarian foods that are available, and with minor tweaks are good for her. So overall, it's been very, very positive. The only potential negative I see is I think that sometimes people think you're doing it because it's a fad diet versus a medical need. I certainly would never go into a restaurant and explain my daughter's condition at this point, because she would kill me. So that's not something that we do, but it's nice to not have to try to explain, but just be like, hey, this is what I like. And I think that in general, people are much more accommodating now than they were, even since she was diagnosed. Although we did find locally, we had a diner that if we brought in her pancake mix, they would make her a waffle. The pizza place would heat up her pizza. The Chinese place would know that she brought her special rice with her. So, they were all willing to work with us before this. But I think for her, as she grows more independent and doesn't want to share with everyone under the sun kind of what her health issues are. She doesn't have to because there are these options, and it's a good thing in my opinion.
Oh, that's great. And that's really great that you had such a strong community that would do that in terms of being able to make the waffles and do the rice. I think that's really
if you go to
Tiffany, go ahead.
If you go to the mom and pop restaurants, because the chain restaurants can't do it, and
right.
they're in the beginning when they're babies, and you tip really well, they will remember you as your child gets older, and they will do whatever they can to accommodate you.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Tiffany, your daughter's a bit younger, but trying to see kind of from your perspective and the fact that there are many different dietary restrictions out there, sounds like many of which affect you and your family. What's your perspective on this?
Okay, so financially, it is much cheaper, but because I always say, my thing that I say is, we were gluten-free before it was cool. Because it used to cost me like $8 for like a half a pound of spaghetti noodles. Now it costs me like $2. So it's cheaper in that sense. But if we go out to restaurants, you always have to explain that she's not on this stuff because it's popular now. She's on this stuff because medically she has to be. And it's everywhere we go. Like, they want to know, is it truly an allergy, or is she just on it because you guys want her on it? And that's not the case. And I live in California, so the fad diets are huge here. So everybody going gluten-free has been a big deal. But then they don't understand like how it hurts us when we go out, because we're not there because we want the popular stuff. We're there because and asking for medical reasons. As far as her metabolic condition, I don't really have to do anything. I do have to ask if they cook in coconut oil, because she can't have any coconut at all whatsoever. Her body just cannot digest it, and she has to limit her avocado. But I have to add, there's many questions have to be asked when we go out to eat. At home, it's just cheaper and much easier to deal with.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So as we were talking about earlier, you all mentioned in terms of just the time intensity of preparing meals ahead of time and really being thoughtful about meal planning. What does that look like during the holiday season, when for many families the tradition is to have more cooking and more people and a lot of different things going around, and even just more things filling up your time in general? How do you kind of manage that, and do you prepare meals ahead, or do you have any other strategies that you could share with other families that are dealing with those issues in terms of already having a time-intensive approach to food and to making meals, and then on top of that you put in special occasions, or like right now, kind of the holiday season? Tiffany, let's start with you.
As far as the holidays, my side of the family is amazing. They text or call me, and they run down what they want to have and how they have to prepare it for Kaden. Because she is severely allergic to nuts, they like to put walnuts on our sweet potatoes. So they just take out sides for her and cook it the way it needs to be cooked for her. Christmas last year, we did like just soups, and my aunt was literally texting me, and she made like a little pot of wedding soup for her because of the meats that she's allergic to, and she can't have regular pasta. So she made it. It was hard, but she made it. So my side of the family is great. Now, their dad's side of the family, who they hardly see, is not so great. I have to actually send food with them so she can be fed during the holidays. When she was younger, when we were still married, his side of the family would just take, like, they would just dip their finger in ranch and put it in her mouth. And she's allergic to milk, like highly allergic to milk. And I would just get so angry. And then they would go off on me like, no, that's my granddaughter. I'll give her whatever I want. I'm like, no, it's my child, and you're not going to do this. You can come change your diapers all night because you're going to make her sick. So, holidays with my family, the only thing I have to prepare separately is her dessert. Usually I'm the one that does dessert on Christmas. So all the desserts are made so she can have them. That's but my family is amazing. It's a lot of work on everybody's part, but they don't want her to be excluded during the family dinner.
Great. Thank you. Brenda, how about for you? Kind of how do all these things kind of come together during these times of celebration and also of hecticness?
Hecticness is hecticness. I think everyone experiences kind of hecticness around the holidays. I do think anyone dealing with the specialty diets, though, feels that pressure a lot more. For me, if I'm hosting, it's fine. It's great. Pretty much at our table, Molly will be able to have everything, but whatever the high protein or meat product is. We make it a point that all of the side veggies are made in a way that she can have them. And sometimes it's just a simple thing, instead of adding milk to the mashed potatoes, add rice milk. Sometimes it's more complicated. We only do low protein desserts in our house. So, we'll have a variety of different ones, and prepping for it is tough. You learn some tricks along the way. What I try to do this week is every night I'll make a cookie dough, and, I'll roll out that cookie dough and I'll cut out the shapes and I'll put it in the freezer. So it's all ready to just kind of bake off whenever I need them. Because that's what's hard, is that you're going to multiple events. We host Christmas Eve and we host Christmas Day. So it's, it's a lot of cooking. And it really is all about trying to plan and trying to coordinate and what we really try to do is not really have high protein and low protein versions, but everything is shared except for, and everyone who's not on a low protein diet can have their protein through the meat or through whatever the normal big dish is. And, for Christmas, our family tradition has always been beef tenderloin as the main thing. So instead we do a cauliflower steak. I'm a vegetarian and Molly's on a low protein diet. So we'll do a cauliflower steak, but we'll make a gravy with mushrooms that can go over the meat, and it can also go over the cauliflower steak. And then all the sides are something that we can all enjoy together. So I'll be honest with you, a hell of a lot of work. But worth it so that social piece and that being part of something is still there.
Great, thank you. And Maria, from your perspective, how do you kind of manage that as a person with the condition, and also probably organizing a lot of things for your family during these times?
Well, the most important thing is I place a very big low-protein food order before the holidays. I make sure that I have a very big stock of formula and a very big stock of the typical low-protein foods that I eat, just so I don't run into a problem where I run out of something very important throughout the holidays and get stuck with it because somebody is on vacation, not available, there's no delivery, there's a snow squall. So just to avoid problems in that department. In terms of dishes that we cook, I sort of play scavenger hunt because the main issue is to make sure that we have food for all the guests and all the family. So typically we'll have some sort of meat cooked in the oven. My husband's side of family is all French, so we do a lot of French cooking. How I adapt to that is typically there would be meats that are cooked in sauce together with vegetables, and I just cook up a side of my low protein pasta and eat it with that sauce, and that works absolutely fine. Keeps me nice and full. And we don't really need to invent a bicycle with complicated recipes. And we tend to aim for something that would sit in the oven for 4 hours, and then we'll just pull it out and eat. So minimize the prep time. For New Year's, I'm in charge of the salads and all sorts of festive stuff. We tend to go easy on the desserts and we try to simplify it. My survival tactic throughout this time, because it's really, really stressful, and there's really, really no time for anything. Like even today, I'm eating low protein rice because that's what I have in the fridge. I used to carry around low protein cookies in my pocket and just snack on those. My kids quickly figured out the tactic where the cookies are, so I kind of skipped that. Switched to low protein crackers or something salty, but anyway, like a little low protein snack that I carry around with myself that would carry me between the meals or the time where I really have to run somewhere and really don't have time to cook anything particularly low pro, not even a sandwich. So yeah, it's thinking ahead of time and having a stash of low protein, something that I can literally just grab off the shelf out of the pocket and stuff it in my mouth, and then we'll see.
Great. Well, you already started to introduce us to the next question. And just a reminder to those who are on the line, we're going to open it up to your questions, probably after this question or maybe one other. So please send in your questions or comments through the chat feature. But Maria, you already talked a little bit about specific strategies that you use, like putting the sauce on the pasta. Is there a recipe that you have or something that you make, particularly during the holidays, that you'd like to share with our audience, either because it's something that you think is easy or you really like it or it's connected to your heritage or just because?
Is it a question for me?
Yep, we're starting with you first.
Sorry, I'm trying to hear what's going on through the door.
No problem.
Recipe. Honestly, I don't have any. I'm like, I can use an everyday pasta and tomato sauce. Like that's what I had for my wedding meal. I had low protein pasta with tomato sauce. As I, if it's served festively, that would work as a festive dish. If I have time, if I have the will, I do bake. For example, we adapted for the Easter, you know how go to church and we do the blessing of the foods. I do Maddie's cake and I bring a pineapple. So I have a blessed pineapple and Maddie's cake for the Easter. For New Year's, anything goes. This is probably one of the only seasons where I do low protein cookie baking. I don't have much of a sweet tooth, but if I do bake, this is the season now. I do love gingerbread. If I don't have it on my blog, I will repost it quite soon. I do have a low protein cookbook coming out early next year, so that recipe is definitely in there. But yeah, gingerbread, I would say. Okay.
So you have a whole book coming out. You have recipes.
Yes, I do.
That's definitely a lot, so that's great. Brenda, how about you?
We've really made it a point that whatever it is that we've had in the past and whatever it is that we love and that's part of our tradition, we found a way to adapt it and to make it low protein. And, you know, for me, it's, again, it's, you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas, they're all the traditional meals, and we don't do sweet potatoes with marshmallows on top, but we do, you know, butternut squash, which is a little bit lower in protein, with, you know, apples on top. You know, so there are ways to still get all the flavors that we love and have some new traditions. And it's, you know, for Christmas, like I said earlier, it really, you know, our traditional meal was always a beef tenderloin. We do scalloped potatoes, and we do low protein scalloped potatoes by adding some other root vegetables if we need to it, and using, again, rice milk with a little bit of cream or a vegetable broth instead of just pure milk, and then there's no cheese in it. You know, we will do a string bean casserole, and we'll do a cream sauce again with just different ingredients. Our cookies, we have rollout sugar cookies. We've got gingerbread cookies. We have Linzer tarts. We have gingerbread houses. We have all different kinds of cakes, and we bring them to various places, and honestly, nobody really knows that they're made for a special diet, and everyone eats it and everyone enjoys it. And that's always kind of been my goal, is that if you have a metabolic disorder, you have there's a deficiency in your liver enzyme. There's nothing wrong with your taste buds. So, if it doesn't taste good to me and it's not something that I enjoy, then I keep working on the recipe until I can get there. And that's kind of always been my goal, is that it's something that can really be shared by everybody, and everybody likes it, and no one is missing whatever it is that they normally think of at the holidays.
Great, thank you. I think that's a really key point in terms of focusing on the flavors, not necessarily specific ingredients. It's more all the flavors and how they come together. Tiffany, how about you? What is there a recipe or something that you really particularly like to make during these times?
So as far as like traditions and recipes, we traditionally have always done turkey, and we do turkey, but we also do ham now because of her allergies. Green bean casserole, for example, everybody loves it. They want to have it at the holidays. It's like the one thing that we all have loved. We make our own cream of mushroom soup, so she can have it because cream of mushroom soup has wheat in it. And then the fried onions. They're breaded. They have wheat. They're just not the best. They're super fatty. So my family cuts their own onion, and then they bread it for breading, and then they fry it a little bit, and then they put it in the oven to crisp it up even more. Sweet potatoes, we changed that recipe when she was a baby because she loved sweet potatoes, but she couldn't have the traditional like brown sugar, butter, marshmallows. It was just bad for her. So we do it's called a bourbon sauce now, and that became a super big tradition. Desserts are always the hardest. She loves pumpkin pie, so we make her own with her own crust. And then we eliminated coconut from everything during the holidays. We used to do these like coconut balls, and they were dipped in chocolate. We just totally got rid of all of it. We used to do peanut butter balls, and we got rid of that too because of her allergies. There's just a lot. It's just, yeah. So the biggest one was the green bean casserole. And it tastes the same, and it's better for you.
Great, thank you. So now we'll turn it to the questions that have come in so far through our chat feature. Again, please feel free to submit any questions. The first one was someone mentioned something about a cauliflower steak, and we just wanted to get a little bit more information about that. I can't remember who mentioned that.
Sorry, I had myself muted. Cauliflower steak is one of my new favorite things, and cauliflower is actually one of my favorite vegetables in the low protein diet. I use it as a replacement for chicken in almost every dish, and so far they've all come out really well. But cauliflower steak is when you take the head of cauliflower and you slice it through the root. And then you just brush it with a little bit of olive oil and some sea salt, and you roast it. And then you can put your sauces on top of it. And, we've topped it with all of your traditional sauces that you would use if you were making, a chicken breast. So we've done cauliflower masala. We've done cauliflower franchise. We've done cauliflower steak Diane. So you can use all of the same sauces, just using a vegetable base instead of a meat base for the broth. And you're cooking, your chicken for those who are not on the low protein diet, and then the cauliflower for those that are, but the sauces and stuff are the same. So it just kind of makes things a little bit easier. But the key to it is just slicing it through the root so that it kind of holds together. And if you Google it, it's a recipe that's pretty common. If you just Google cauliflower steak, it'll have visuals on it on how to do it. But at the holidays, like I said, we do normally like a red wine and mushroom sauce. So we do the cauliflower as the base for that and throw that sauce on top. And then those who are having, meat can throw that on top of their meat. And it just saves a little time, but you still are getting the flavors. And I think the key for me is, and I've been a vegetarian for a long time, before my daughter was diagnosed, is there's so much flavor in vegetables if they're cooked properly. If you boil them, they don't taste that good. But if you roast them and if you saute them and if you blanch them and then simmer them in something, it's a completely different thing. And you really can get amazing flavors and not feel like you're missing out. And like I said, cauliflower is my go-to for more of chicken things, and portobello mushrooms and eggplant are my go-to for more kind of red meat, steaky kind of things, depending on the flavors I'm working with. But for me, I try to usually start with a really, really good recipe. And then I try to adapt it to make it low protein. So I know that the flavors are there, and then I just have to figure out what substitutes I can make.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. And something that now is I've seen on a couple of menus at restaurants as well in terms of that the cauliflower steak. So there are a lot of really good recipes out there for that. Another question that we have is if anyone has a good substitute for turkey, very timely for this season.
Well, Brenda mentioned she uses cauliflower. I use jackfruit. Canned jackfruit in brine. It mimics meat very well, both chicken and pork, and I guess it could work as turkey as well. It wouldn't have the turkey taste. However, if you add powdered broth to it, if you can find turkey broth, that would definitely convey the flavor. I use chicken broth on it and it works fine.
One of the things that's great, and I think it's Susan who asked that question, is there is Bisto instant gravy, which you can get. You can definitely get it online. It's more of a British and an Irish food, but their gravies actually don't have any meat in them, and they've got an instant chicken flavor and they have an instant beef flavor. And if you're looking for something quick, you do a cauliflower steak and you throw the chicken gravy on top of it, you're going to get all of those flavors that you're looking for. It's not going to have the same chew as a turkey, of course, but you will still get that. You serve that over some mashed potatoes and you're going to have some real comfort food.
Great. And Maria, where do you find the jackfruit? Just at your local grocery store, or
I do find it in local grocery stores, usually in Chinese or Filipino or Korean ones. It is available to order online. I do find that ordering online is very expensive. The cans that I find here, they run about $4 or $5 maximum. They're very cheap. Ordering online is more expensive, but it covers availability in other places where they don't have that many ethnic grocery stores. And when I do buy, I stock up because it's canned and they have a very, very good shelf life. So when I do buy, I buy like 15 cans at a time.
Great, thank you for that. I'm going to see if we have any more questions. What advice do you have for new parents who are diagnosed with a newborn screening condition? Both kind of general advice as well as any resources you would point them to.
You just go? Just start answering? The first thing that I tell you that I wish that I knew is breathe. It's going to be okay. It's going to take time for you to get there, and everything that your child you're going to be watching, and you need every developmental milestone, and it's so overwhelming and scary that first year. It does somehow become second nature, and I'm not going to tell you that it is ever easy, but I can promise you it gets easier. And depending on what what diagnosis you have, find the support group. Find out, there's so many Facebook pages that are incredible, and talk to your clinic, because there are resources out there that certainly weren't available before. And if you're talking about a low protein diet that you're dealing with, maybe, get a really, really good vegetarian cookbook. Get comfortable cooking vegetables.
I have a PQ cookbook coming out in January.
Make them, you can make them the main part of make the meat the side dish. Make the vegetables where you put your time and effort into. And then when your child is ready, you're going to feel more comfortable.
Great.
So my advice on that question, I have a younger child that has a fatty acid oxidation disorder, which is fairly new. So in my area, she is the only one with the diagnosis. So Brenda said it doesn't get, I mean, I don't think she said it this way, but it gets easier because it's your way of life now. When it first happens, you feel like your life is falling apart, because you have to figure it out. My daughter, like I said, doesn't just have this metabolic condition. She has a lot of other conditions. That's her in the picture. And she looks normal. Like, she doesn't look like there's anything wrong with her, but her insides just don't work properly. Find a good team. That's what I have to say. A good team that will work for your child, not against you or against your child. Because of when she was diagnosed and California had just implemented the newborn screen, there was nobody even in the state. So we went to San Francisco. I live in the central part of California, and I went to San Francisco, and I found the best doctors, the best support groups, the best teams. We went through therapy, like feeding therapy, because she had such bad oral aversion because of how long she had to be on formula, and they were all there as resources. Support groups online, on Facebook. Being the fact that she is the only one in the area. We have other ones in the area that have other fatty acid oxidation disorders, but they're not the same strain of it. So my biggest support is online. And my closest one, I've never even met her, but she lives in Reno, which is only a 4-hour drive. Her husband has the same disorder. And she literally, when my daughter had a fever, she literally stayed up throughout the night to call me every 2 hours so I could check her blood sugar. Because if her blood sugar dropped below 80, we automatically had to go to the hospital because of how bad she was sick. We made it through that night. At 8 a.m., she's like, "Are you up? I need to go. I'm going to go get some sleep." And I'm like, "Yes, thank you for everything you did last night." So I could get the little bit of sleep with my daughter. So there's people out there online that will support you no matter what.
Sounds great. That's such a great story of that type of support. It doesn't necessarily mean it's someone who lives on your block or in your neighborhood, but that support when you really need there is so critical. Maria, I don't know if you have any suggestions or advice for those who newly diagnosed parents.
For a newly diagnosed parent, I would just say that same as Brenda, don't panic. It's gonna turn out okay. As a person with a disorder, I can tell you from inside out, it doesn't look as bad and scary. I take it as a lifestyle. When I was a kid, I wasn't irked by the fact that I've never tasted meat or fish or something else. Everybody around was panicking, how can I live the rest of my life not tasting dairy or not having that fish for dinner? Like, easy. That's doable, that's fine, it's not bad, it's a lifestyle. And when the kid grows up a little bit, I would, the biggest piece of advice that I can say is, first of all, let them know as much as they can about their disorder, and second, get them those cooking skills. That's their survival skills, because with special diets, at some point in their lifetime, they have to start cooking for themselves. And if they do not know how to boil a potato or a carrot, and they don't know how to cook pasta, come teenage years, they're in big trouble. So don't chase your kids out of the kitchen. Let them see how you cook. Let them help you. This will simplify your life later on and their life as well greatly. So cooking skills, very important.
Great, thank you. And lastly, a very specific question. How do you get the brine off of the jackfruit in the can?
Just rinse it. Open the can, rinse it through the colander. You can drizzle some cold water over top of it. It's not that salty. It's not a pickle. There's no vinegar in it.
I find that I soak it probably 3 or 4 times. I swish it around and then pull it out and then dump the water, and after 3 or 4 soaks, all that brine flavor is gone.
I don't do that, but I don't add any salt while cooking, so.
Great. Thank you so much to each of you for sharing your perspectives and your stories and your advice. This is really great. I think we really highlighted the fact that everyone can have a slightly different approach, but really seeing what works best for you and your family, and for those on the line who are clinicians or work in public health, really seeing that this isn't just a one-time type of a conversation. It really is ongoing, and as you know, as parents are learning about their kids and kids are learning about themselves and growing up, that the conversation can evolve and build upon itself. So thank you to everyone who's joined us today. And as a reminder, please be sure to check out our Tasting Traditions Public Square, and feel free to post your perspectives, your recipes, your different types of information. This is now you can see what the public square looks like. It's right there on Baby's First Pet. And we'll have this open through the holidays, so probably through the end of the year and probably through the first 2 weeks or so of the new year. And again, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope everyone has a really great rest of your day. Thank you.
See ya.
Bye. Thank you.